What's up guys, welcome to LearntoCode.tech and the Daily Method series. Today we'll be discussing JavaScript's IndexOf method. Okay guys, let's take a look at a description. The IndexOf method is one of many members on the Array.prototype chain, which means that it comes included with the latest JavaScript engine and can be used right out of the box on any instance of an array. Let's take a look at a few examples. Okay, so let's get started with the definition. The primary use of the IndexOf method is to traverse arrays like the one that we have here. This is going to be our sample data, and it's going to be essentially a collection of movies. We want to search this array for a particular movie title, and we want to get the index value of that back. The IndexOf method is going to be the perfect solution to do exactly that. So let's define a movie variable. We're going to get started. We're going to look for the title of Captain Marvel, and you'll see why we chose that in just a second. We'll then invoke the IndexOf method on our movies collection, and we're going to pass the initial parameter, which is going to be our movie title, and we're going to log that to the screen, and we're going to see what we get. It's a good idea to actually think about, before we run this in the console, what index value do you expect? We do have two values of Captain Marvel. We have this value here. This is going to be an index value of 3, and this here is going to be an index value of 8. Now, do you expect 3 or 8 or both? Think about it. Okay, let's go ahead and run this in the console. As you can see here, we get a value of 3. And this is pretty interesting. It's because the IndexOf method is going to traverse the array, and what it's going to do is once it finds the element, the search term that we pass as the first parameter, it's going to return the index value of that, and then it's going to stop. So it's only looking for the first instance of that search term, that first match, and then it's going to stop. Now, what's also interesting about the IndexOf method is that it takes as a second parameter a from index. Now this value, it defaults at 0, which is why we start from index value of 0, which is at glass, and we start counting forward from there. And once we find Captain Marvel, we stop, we return the index value of 3. Now, what if we were to go ahead and place an index value right after 3 of 4? What do you expect the index value to be returned here? Which Captain Marvel do we expect? So let's go ahead and run that. And again, we get 8. And that corresponds with the second to last element within the array, which is our duplicate value of Captain Marvel. So now that we have a decent understanding of how to use the IndexOf method, let's take a look at how we would use it to solve two of these problems. Problem number 1 is asking us to create a function that accepts an array of movies and a movie title. It should add the movie to the list if it does not exist and return the updated list, or return a message indicating that the movie is represented in the list. So we're essentially tasked with verifying if a particular movie title exists within our movies array, and taking some course of action if it does and if it doesn't. So the way we do this is we're using the IndexOf method on top of the movies collection. We pass our search term in as the first parameter into IndexOf, and we're going to check to see if that return value is equal to -1. If you remember in the beginning, we stated that if a value does not exist within the array and we search for it, then we're going to immediately get back the result of -1, which essentially means that there is no value within the array that matches the specified search term. Because if there was, we would get back that particular index value. So in this case, it doesn't exist, and so we're going to use the push method to add the movie to the array, and then we're going to go ahead and return it. And finally, if the movie does exist, we'll reach our else clause, and we'll go ahead and return a nice little error message indicating that the movie already exists within the list. Okay, so let's log out 2 examples to see how that method actually works. We'll start with calling our update movie list with the movies, and we'll define our movie as, actually we'll keep it as the Captain Marvel, which is defined up here, and we'll comment out this log, and we'll go ahead and attempt to update the movies collection with the Captain Marvel title, and let's see what we get. And as you can see, we get, sorry, that movie already exists in the movie list, because Captain Marvel does exist within the movies array actually 2 times, both at index 3 and at index 8. But let's say if we were to try a brand new title, let's say, what do we have in here? Let's say we want to add in Batman. Let's go old school, Batman Forever. So we'll add in Batman Forever as our title. And we'll try to add that to the list. So what we would expect here is to get a whole brand new list containing the Batman Forever title included in the movies array. And as you can see here, as the last element, we have Batman Forever. So it seems that the update movie list function works. And with that being said, we can move on to problem number 2. Problem statement 2 tells us to create a function that uses the IndexOf method to return all indices of a particular element within an array. Now, if you remember from the very beginning, we used the IndexOf method to reset the starting point from which to start searching for elements from the default of 0 to 4 to help us access duplicate values within our array. But what if you want to collect all of the indexes of all of the specific value that you're looking for and store that within an array? Well, that's exactly what problem 2 is asking us to do, which is to essentially create a function like get all indices of that takes in an array of movies as well as a movie title and returns a brand new array containing all of the index values that represent where that movie title is positioned within the array. So the way we do that is we're going to go ahead and create, well, we created the indices array, and this is going to store all of the index values of that movie within the movie array, and this is what will ultimately be returned at the end of the array here. IDX is going to represent index, and that's going to be the initial index that we're going to search for. Once we get that value, we'll then check to see if it's equal to -1. And once we've confirmed that it's not, that the value actually exists within the array, we'll be able to move forward to the loop. If not, we'll return this error message indicating that it does not exist within the list. Now, if it does, we want to make sure that we collect each index value that represent that movie title. So we're going to loop for as long as the index value does not equal to -1. So what we do is we collect the initial index value and add that to the indices array, and then we redefine IDX, right? So, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to invoke the IndexOf method and pass it the movie that we're looking for. And the key here is in the second parameter that we discussed earlier, we're going to pass in the index value of the previous element that we searched for, and we're going to increment that by 1, right? Because if you think about it, if we're looking for all instances of Captain Marvel, right, then once we find the third index value of Captain Marvel, we want to check for the 8th index. So we're going to have to start 1 element forward. So once we get here, the IndexOf method is now going to continue looking forward until it finds the next instance of Captain Marvel, which it will get here at 8, and then we can add that to the indices array. Then after this, after we move forward again, we've reached the end of the array. Even if we hadn't, as long as there's no Captain Marvel after Black Panther, we've essentially completed our list. We have all of the indices that represent Captain Marvel within the list, and then we can just go ahead and return that, which we do right here. So let's just go ahead and log that to the console and see if that's what we're going to get. So we'll do get all indices of, we'll pass in the movies array, and we'll pass in our movie, which should be defined as Captain Marvel. Actually, we have it as Batman Forever, so we'll change that to Captain Marvel. And then we'll go ahead and run that in the console. And boom. We actually we get sorry that movie already exists. This could be because we didn't comment out. We didn't comment out this log here. Let's comment that out. Let's clear it. Let's run it again. And we get our array containing the index value of 3 and 8.